Welcome to Tales from the Tap. My name is Frankie and this is my co-host.
And the man.
We are excited to talk to you about pre-release for Murders of Karlov Manor, or as Magic has so wonderfully made the acronym MKM. What a fail compared to the other acronyms that we've had. Like we had such clean acronyms, and now we're
I mean, they kind of broke with LCI, but yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah,
MKM doesn't sound very cool.
No. But before we do, first things first, standard RCQ season. It's kind of feeling like through some of our playtesting and some of our discussions, like for standard, that it's felt really untested. Like there's a lot of cards that are in standard that seem good that no one's really playing.
Yeah, standard's like all over the place right now. I feel like obviously we have like the top 4, top 5 decks that we kind of consistently see, but even beyond that, every time I'm testing on Arena, it's just like so many different brews, so many different cards, even the same versions of decks. Like it's not all the same domain deck, it's not all the same Esper deck. I mean, Esper especially has like its differences with like the wedding announcement version
versus like the tempo version, versus Legends.
Yeah, and Legends has made a big comeback. The amount of people playing 5-color Legends online it's been really, really annoying. Although I kind of like the deck. So
play Joda in standard.
Joda's so nasty. Like I'll like have a board game. I'm like, okay, nothing can kill me. Oh wait, I forgot about Joda.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really cool because not only is there like a lot of exploration to be done still in standard, I think that beyond that, Karlov Manor is just going to shake up the format even more. So we're for sure going to see a ton of changes and hopefully a lot more innovation.
Yeah, I kind of said this to you off camera, but one of the things that I think a lot about seeing MKM and Karlov Manor is that this set feels like broken with some of the stuff that it spoiled. And now we have all the cards, but like there's a lot that I'm like, oh, that's really good, and that's really good.
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's kind of interesting because I still stick by saying that the Crime Novelist is my favorite card of the year after the full set is spoiled. But there's a lot of crazy cards. Like that new Leyline is pretty impressive. I'm actually excited to start brewing with that card. But if you look at the last 2 sets, Walls of Eldraine and Caverns of Ixalan, both of them were really high power sets, and this one feels stronger.
It does. It feels stronger off the bat. And like on top of it, what's really gross for me is Mike Paolini, who like plays on Pioneer on Tuesdays, was like, oh man, I can't wait for that new Leyline to come out for this deck, and he was playing mono green. And I was like, why? He's like 4 devotion turn 0, and I was like,
yeah, we were all talking about that right away. We were like, wow, you can probably just play actual green devotion ramp like it was designed that way in standard when Darrow's first came out.
That hurts me because I'm tired of getting Ulamogged in Pioneer.
Yeah, it's so funny because too, like when the Leyline got spoiled, the first thing I did was like, okay, well let's look at what the hybrid pips are because I wonder what's like the hard color. And I was like, green and blue, green and red, green and black. Like, wait a minute,
something's not right here.
Hold on a second.
Right.
Like, also, Sign Draco seems exciting because like Domain, obviously in standard, amazing. Domain has just already been a thing, and now it's definitely not going anywhere. I think even after rotation, losing the Triomes, the fact that we get to surveil lands with the land types and this new Leyline, I think Domain is just clean, good to go for the rest of its duration in standard with Dominaria United. But in modern, where we've already had like Domain Zoo and stuff, it's kind of making a comeback as it is. And Sign Draco really likes this card. I just think it's really cool. And for Pioneer, because we don't have fetch lands, this could actually make the 5-color decks better. You know, when you're playing this card, and like, now all your lands are Wubber, so you
are fixed.
Exactly, and the fact that you don't have fetch lands like you do in modern, it's really kind of hard. Like you play a lot of Nibtolite, so you know how it can just be, oh, I didn't get the right colors, and I couldn't really have done anything about it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And the mana base is kind of as good as it's going to get with Triomes and Shock lands, etc. You can only go so far with it. But what's it called? I'm really excited about this set in general. Like Crime Novelist, the new Leyline. You have a card that you're really excited about as well. I think it's I keep forgetting. I want to say it's like a bird because it's like a flash hate bear. It's like I keep thinking of
Doorkeeper Thrall.
Yeah, it's a Thrall, right?
Yes. And that card is rack.
Yeah, agreed.
Doorkeeper Thrall is absolutely out of this world. And for the fact that we're not going to be able to cut this video, we have people at the store today for this recording. So special sneak preview for those over there.
For sure.
But yeah, I'm excited. I think that card's going to shake up like Domain. Like it's going to have a hard time with that card. And there's a lot of like, oh man, we just got Tashana's Tidebinder, and that card is so broken. And then this card's like, haha, psych, you're not countering nothing.
Yeah, they're going to be having a lot of fights between this card and Tashana's. The fact that this is a 2-drop kind of aligns really nicely with it. But
well, and I feel like they gave it Flash to specifically.
I mean, it had to have Flash for it to be like a good card in 2024. But like also, I don't know. We've seen so many iterations of 8-Bear on like Torpor Orb abilities, but this is like, sure, it's only creatures and artifacts, but this is like actually really, really good with the Flash. Where like before you get like what Kintali Honor Guard or whatever from like Rivals of Ixalan, or I think it was like actual Ixalan, but like there's already been like Torpor creatures, and there's the one that they play in Pioneer where it's like you can pay 2 to like counter the trigger or whatever.
Oh sure.
So like this feels like the one that's like, oh, here's the one that's good for constructed. Like this is just gonna crush. Obviously the one with the pay 2 you can abuse obviously with like
Lotus Field,
etc. Yeah. But beyond that, it's not really gonna be like I'm bringing this in against humans for their ETBs. This new guy though, like, oh man, I feel really bad for the Pioneer humans decks because this just kind of like turns their whole deck off.
I'm so mad that I don't know the name of that card because I'm usually like the one that remembers card names.
Yeah.
Especially for my formats, and it's from Strixhaven.
Julian's gonna be so mad at me because we were just talking about this card a lot, and he was playing Lotus Field specifically, the combo deck, not the blue-white control version with this card in it. And I just can't remember the name, but hopefully Todd can remember it or pull it up for us. The card is very, very good. But like you said, this Doorkeeper Thrall, it's just insane. I'm really excited to play with this card, and I'm also really excited, like what you said, Domain hates this card. And then you were talking to me about it off the podcast. I'm like, wait a minute, you're right. This is like Archangel of Wrath,
Topiary Stomper,
Trexa, especially the Topiary Stomper.
Yeah,
Trexa, like,
it's like
turning off all their triggers is so gross. I actually genuinely think that might be a really good reason to not play Domain at MagicCon.
Yeah, and we're praying for it. So
true. I do not want to play Domain, even though that's all I've been testing with online is basically just Domain. But I feel like I'm only doing that as a result of we're not going to really know what standard looks like until Karlov starts entering the mix.
Right.
So I don't want to pivot yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with that, we got to get into stuff. But before we get into stuff, we have one more thing, and that is Murders of Karlov Manor is bringing us the new hot human. So if you don't know about this, Dan, Jeremy, who regularly comes to the shop, one of their buddies says that the token from Throne of Eldraine is like the hot human. Like she's got this little gold
she has the rooster on the
headpiece and this gown, and there are chickens around. If you don't know the human off the top of your head, I believe it's made from is it
Lovestruck Beast?
Yes, from Lovestruck Beast. It's the one human that's made from Lovestruck Beast, and so it's called by his buddy Hot Human. So Jeremy only plays it with wedding announcement, not the actual human tokens. He's using the Hot Human.
Sure.
And there's a hotter, in my opinion, human that was made in Murders of Karlov Manor. So Todd will lovingly put up both tokens for y'all to compare. Let us know in the comments.
I feel like it's a little unfair because this new one's more zoomed in, so you really get the details. But it looks really good.
But it looks really
good. The other
one
though has the roosters, and I kind of simp for walking with the basket on the farm with the roosters.
She's just a hometown girl with her chickens. So if that's your vibe, then
yeah. But no, they're both great for sure. You got to have only these with the wedding announcement for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. With that, let's get into our episode for today. So first off, housekeeping. Huge thank you to all of our patrons that support our episode. It is the best way to support us and the content that we're making. Yeah, thank you guys.
Shout outs to Gabe, 6 out of 6.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to support our show, but also get some additional perks, feel free to go ahead and check us out on Patreon at Tales from the Tap. We'd really appreciate it. And, but our episodes will always be free to those who listen. And we appreciate all of you that do come to our episodes by any means possible. Next, we're going to do a new giveaway coming soon for YouTube, as well as Commander content. Commander content will be soon with the new cameras that we have. Probably starting this next month in February, we'll start putting out those newest episodes. And that'll be via our playlist on YouTube, which I don't know if you saw. I started tweaking with the YouTube this week. I did put all of our video episodes as our podcast episodes.
Nice, that's cool.
So that people can go see our original ones that were just audio on there, but specifically highlighted in the playlist is only the ones with video.
Gotcha. That's cool.
And MTG Chicago got featured. And we've been sharing on our community tab more and more of the gameplay that I've had here for the different decks that I've been playing. I already had someone this week, Sal was messaging me being like, "Oh my gosh, this Grixis Phoenix list, someone's asking for it. You need to send it over." And I didn't have it made, so I had to go home making it and being "Okay, here you go."
Here's the actual list, right?
Yeah.
I get a message for a Julian deck because I start telling people now to bring me interesting decks to get on camera or decks that haven't been played, because I want to get actual diverse, interesting content for Sal's channel. And Julian has just been cooking. Him and Jeremy just cooking really good decks, and obviously they're both really good players, so they're fun to watch on camera as well. Every day is a DM from some guy that's "I need that deck." So I'm just Julian, every deck now it just has to be on Moxfield.
Yeah, just come so pre-ready.
But yeah, we'll be probably pushing a giveaway for the YouTube, especially because we want to promote the Commander content. That'll have its own playlist as well. But for those who are here from our previous giveaway with the Twitter, you can always follow us there. We try to stay active as well to just stay engaged with the community. And for those that are in our actual community, and our Discord is always going to be free access, but we do have special perks for those that are patrons. But as for the Discord itself, you can always hang out with us, message, post your deck lists. We'll talk as much as we can while we're active.
Yeah, and those specific channels, for those that are wondering, well, what are those Discord access perks for being a patron? We do have a specific deck list submission channel, and we also have our private coaching channels as well, where we are prepping people for, hey, into Chicago, MagicCon Chicago. Jeez,
another one.
Another one. Swear jar. Put another $1 in.
Yeah, we're also helping with cyber guides too, so people can post in our. Obviously, when you're at a certain tier of the Patreon, you can just post your deck list. We'll do a little chat with you if you want to get on call, or we'll just talk about the things we like or dislike about your deck list, or you can just tell us about your certain metagame, what decks are more prevalent or not prevalent, and what you're scared of, or cards that are giving you trouble. We can help you with that. I've been helping a lot of people with Tron recently, so I'm going to try to update my deck list for that as well and post a sideboard guide. But for those that are just playing a deck and want to go to a tournament, the channels are there for sideboard guide help, actual ins and outs of what to cut and what not to cut, or cards to play or not to play in specific metagames, etc.
Yeah, just know you'll get way more from us, personal service, and we're way cooler than an article on Channel Fireball, so come our way.
I mean, I'm definitely more personable, but it's because it's easier when you're talking to somebody on a Discord call.
Right. All right. With that being said, time to just jump into Murders of Karlov Manor, and we're gonna try and be as speedy as we can because these are usually 2-hour episodes. And
Frank went ham on the show notes, but he put a lot of work into this, so we're gonna try to go really, really fast. But
pages on pages on pages.
At the same time, there's a lot of good content, so you're gonna want to pay attention to the different new mechanics.
Get that paper. All right, let's dive in. So first being mechanics. We have returning mechanics, one of which is face down cards, but face down cards is coming in a new flavor for Magic. That being 1 disguise and 2 cloak. So first we have disguise. Our first card, I actually got to pull it up because
really quick while he's pulling it up, I'll just say that the other returning mechanics are not as involved, so we'll just mention them offhand. It's clues are back in standard, and investigating specifically is back, which I think is really cool because if you think about it, when clues and investigating first came out, that was their first go about the new style of tokens, the rules update specifically. Then they went into treasures, but they weren't hard into treasures. They weren't like evergreen yet. It was just like, this is the treasure set with Ixalan. And then they were like, no, treasures are permanent. These tokens are really cool. We're going to try to make this a thing forever. But since then, we really haven't had clues. So I'm looking forward to see what like the new iteration of clues are after they've already established blood and food and treasures version 2, etc.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Our first card, returning mechanics for disguise. It is Unyielding Gatekeeper. So Unyielding Gatekeeper is a 2 mana, 1 and a white, elephant cleric with disguise for 2 mana as well. When Unyielding Gatekeeper is turned face up, exile another target non-land permanent. If you controlled it, return it to the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, its controller gains a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token, and it is a 3/2. So, disguise saying, you may cast this card face down for 3 mana, 3 colorless, as a 2/2 creature with ward 2. Then turn it face up at any time for its disguised cost. So, this card seems really sweet. You do have the ability to either flicker one of your own creatures to get an ETB trigger again, or you can exile your opponent's best creature and then they get a 2/2 instead.
Right.
And getting into disguise a little bit more. A disguised ability lets you cast a card face down, right? I said this for 3. This is all disguised cards. Announcing that you are using a disguise ability. Anytime you have priority, you can turn a face down permanent with disguise face up by paying its disguise cost. So you can do this on your turn, their turn, either or as an instant speed thing.
Well, is it like Morph where it's faster than instant speed? Because I believe Morph was like a special action. So you could do it in response to split second. So
sure.
If it's the same way, it's basically just faster than instant speed, which is kind of quirky, but maybe they didn't work it that way specifically. But yeah, anytime you have priority, basically TLDR for like 99% of the time, it's going to be 99.99. Honestly, it's just going to be instant speed. But if you're playing against like split second spells in Commander, you might want to ask a judge. It could have the special action ruling, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read off the next couple bits, and this is going to be for every mechanic. It's just like some of the tips that Wizards has given us. So next is the face down spell has no mana cost and a mana value of 0. When you cast a face down spell, put it on the stack face down so no other player knows what it is, and pay 3 to cast it. This is an alternative cost. The creature spell is a 2/2 with ward 2 and has no name, mana cost, or creature types. The resulting creature is a 2/2 creature with ward 2. Again, it has no name, mana cost, or creature types. Both the spell and the resulting creature are colorless and have a mana value of 0. Other effects that apply to the spell or creature can still grant it any characteristics it doesn't have or change the characteristics it does. Anytime you have priority, you may turn the face down creature face up by revealing what its disguise cost is and paying that cost. This is a special action. It doesn't use the stack and can't be responded to.
Right, so that
answers your question. Only a face down permanent can be turned face up. This way, a face down spell cannot. The only other important thing to know, specifically with this ability that wasn't mentioned on here, and this will be a rules thing for pre-release, is at the end of the game, you must reveal all face down cards, because in theory, someone could cheat and put a disguise card down that doesn't actually have disguise.
Don't worry too much about it because it's technically been not eroded, but back during Morphs and Kanzatark here, it was actually a game loss if you didn't reveal your Morphs, like straight up game loss. Very, very punishing. Since then, the philosophy on judging has been a little bit more updated, and they even back then they were like, hey, it's kind of rough. So I believe it was actually during like Khan's block where they updated the ruling and were like, it's no longer a game loss, it's like a warning. But you definitely want to just reveal them. Don't have that interaction, don't have that feels bad, don't have people thinking, oh, this guy's scumming. But if you're at a pre-release, it's casual REL typically, or regular at most, and the judges are going to be pretty lenient, but do them a favor and just reveal your manifested, cloaked, whatever you want to call them, your face down cards.
Yeah, the next card and the next mechanic is Cloak. The card we have is Cryptic Coat. It is 2 and a blue. Artifact equipment. When Cryptic Coat enters the battlefield, cloak the top card of your library, then attach Cryptid Cloak to it. A cryptid creature gets +1/0 and cannot be blocked. You can then pay 2 mana, 1 and a blue, return Cryptic Coat to its owner's hand. The text for Cloak is to cloak a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2, turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So with Cloak, I just said to cloak a card, you put it on the battlefield face down, 2/2, Ward 2, all that jazz. It's still colorless and has a mana value of 0. Other effects that apply to the permanent can still grant it any characteristics it doesn't have or change the characteristics it does have. Anytime you have priority, you can turn a cloaked permanent you control face up by revealing that it's a creature card, ignoring any copy effects or time-changing effects that might be applying to it, and paying its mana cost. This is a special action. It doesn't use the stack. It cannot be responded to. If a cloaked creature would have disguise or morph if it were face up, you may also turn it face up by paying its disguise or morph cost. Unlike a face down creature that was cast using a disguise or morph ability, a cloaked creature may still be turned face up after it loses its abilities if it's a creature card. If a double face card is cloaked, it will be put onto the battlefield face down. While face down, it can't transform. If the front face of the card is a creature, you can turn it face up by paying its mana cost. If you do, its front face will be faced up. That's a lot of things.
It's a lot, but TLDR, if you're used to morphs or manifests from playing Commander, or you've just been playing for a while, cloaking is effectively manifesting your opponent's cards. So like manifest was make a morph off of your deck. Cloaking is making a disguised creature or whatever off of your opponent's deck.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
Some notes specifically about this mechanic, and it like just notes in general about changes to face down cards permanently. So casting a face down creature spell using a morph ability now requires for you to declare that you are using a morph ability. It's noted, they said you're probably doing this already, but it's now necessary to distinguish between morph and disguise.
Sure,
so
that makes
it is
sense.
important for Commander. At any time, you can look at a face down spell or permanent you control. You can't look at face down permanents or spells you don't control unless an effect instructs you to do so. If a face down creature loses its abilities, it can't be turned face up with a disguise ability because it will no longer have the disguise ability or disguise cost once face up.
Right.
Because the permanent is on the battlefield both before and after it's turned face up, turning a permanent face up doesn't cause any enter the battlefield abilities to trigger. Because face down creatures don't have a name, they can't have the same name as any other creature, even another face down creature. A permanent that turns face up or face down changes characteristics, but it otherwise is the same permanent. Spells and abilities that were targeting that permanent and auras and equipments that were attached to that permanent aren't affected unless the new characteristics of the object change the legality of those targets or attachments. Turning a permanent face up or face down doesn't change whether that permanent is tapped or untapped. If a face down spell leaves the stack and goes to any zone other than the battlefield, if it was countered, for example, you must reveal it. Similarly, if a face down permanent leaves the battlefield, you must reveal it. You must also reveal all face down spells and permanents you control if you leave the game or the game ends.
Yeah, the only hard one to remember is the game ending. Like, don't just shuffle them up. But like, if a guy gets killed, typically you're just like, "Yep, here's the guy."
Yeah.
I will say there is one other rule change that doesn't affect standard, I believe, but in the commander decks there are suspend cards, and they're with Karlov Manor updating the rules on suspend. So a lot like how Discover is a May ability with the casting, also Cascade, where like with Discover it can go to your hand if you choose not to cast it. With Suspend, once the last trigger goes on the stack, you can actually choose not to cast the suspend spell, where in the past it was not optional.
Yeah, a lot of people I've seen I saw Cedric Phillips being
he was
like
really mad about
super upset. And I was like,
I was gonna respond, but I was like, I just don't understand the anger. It's whatever. It also kind of like, to me, makes more sense this way that it's optional, but everyone's like, no, it doesn't make sense. It should punish you. Magic should be bad and you should hate it.
I don't know. I think that it's a powerful mechanic, and it sometimes having downside, I think, is like worth the risk.
Yeah, having a downside is no problem, but I think they updated it specifically because like they wanted to interact friendlier with these new cards, and 99 times out of 100, suspend is gonna be used as like a commander mechanic, even in modern, we're like cascading into these guys realistically.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think for the most part it's fine. It's like it only hurts you if like what the burn player doesn't rift bolt himself, or living end mirror matches. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
sure.
let's
yeah.
be real. Like, what does this actually affect for like the competitive grinders?
Yeah.
If any, it just makes EDH friendlier for the casual players, and that's fine.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Last two things about face up, face down cards. You must ensure that face down spells and permanents can be easily differentiated from each other. You're not allowed to mix up the cards that represent them on the battlefield to confuse other players. The order in which they entered the battlefield should remain clear, as well as what ability caused them to be face down. This includes disguise, cloak, and in games involving older cards, morph, manifest, as well as a few other effects that can turn cards face down.
Don't be a cheater. There should be a token for each of these abilities, so it makes it easy if you really care that much.
Ooh, Boar's Hat token alert.
I mean, I think we do have a disguise in the works.
Just all of them, though. Well, you can make the morph. Do. I mean, Todd needs ideas. You're welcome.
Once a month tokens are coming out, so maybe we can get to morph and manifest eventually, but we're starting with the standard ones that matter.
I don't know. I feel like a genius. I'm waiting for my commish.
Parkish Bowmaster was really good. I'll take the L on not liking it at first.
Also,
actually, it's like right here.
Beauty. And on top of it, like, I told them about those map tokens like way too early. Anyway, we'll get back to it. So, common methods for doing this include using markers, dice, simply placing them in the order on the battlefield. Lastly, if something tries to turn a face down instant or sorcery card on the battlefield face up, reveal that card to show all players it's an instant or sorcery card. The permanent remains on the battlefield face down. Abilities that trigger when a permanent turns face up won't trigger because even though you revealed that card, it never turned face up.
Right.
That is it for face up, face down cards. Next. New enchantment cards. Cases. I'm so excited for these.
These are really cool.
The flavor, and on top of it, some of them just like look good.
The white one that's a Soul Sister is just disgusting for Amalia.
So our example is going to be in green, and that green card is Case of the Trampled Garden, which says, when this case enters the battlefield, distribute 2 1/1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control to solve. Creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. When it's solved, whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn, and this costs 2 and a green. I just think that these cases are sweet.
I mean, in limited, they're going to be crazy.
Correct. But
like,
and a lot of them are like good enough, even if you don't get to the solving part. A couple of them are not, but like a lot of them are just like, this is good enough as a spell.
The ones that are just good as like the enchantment are the really scary ones, because then they're just like free payoff for something you already wanted. And I'm pretty sure they don't all sack themselves. Like only a few are like, oh, my ability after is solving is like you sack me. A lot of them you just get to keep.
Right.
So that's kind of crazy.
Right. I mean, this being a permanent that says every turn put a 1/1 counter on a target creature when you attack with it and it gets trample is like these late game baddies. It's like, this is horrifying.
Yeah, and but you get the immediate payoff. So it's not like some like it feels like back in the day the spell would have been like nothing, and then eventually you get this like
the
weird
cool
payoff.
Thing. Yeah.
Now it's like
it's just like
impact now.
Yeah.
This one specifically kind of reminds me of like a Rishkar from like Aether Revolt, where like you get the guys, they can make green mana now, but it mattered more that you were putting counters on your dudes, etc.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So with Stan talking about things being solved, each case has 2 special keyword abilities: to solve and solved. To solve means at the beginning of your end step, if you meet the condition, this case is not solved and becomes solved. The meaning of solved differs based on what type of ability follows it. Like solved activated ability means that the activated ability happens. Activate only if this case is solved. Activated abilities contain a colon. They're generally written cost, colon, then the effect. there's solved triggered abilities, which means that like when it's solved, triggered abilities use the word when, whenever, or at. They're often written as triggered condition, then the effect.
Right.
There's solved static abilities.
The static ones are just like you just get this on the end step once it's resolved.
Yeah. Two solve abilities will check for their condition twice. Once when the ability would trigger and once when it gets resolved. If the condition isn't true at the beginning of your end step, the ability won't trigger at all. If the condition isn't true when the ability resolves, the case won't be.
Yeah, so that just basically means it has an intervening if, a lot like Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. If they manage to remove a mountain and you no longer have 6, they're no longer bolting. But so with the cases, you can actually stop somebody's case from being solved in response, which is very important to know.
Right. And will probably be more important for I guess constructed or like commander play rather than like it will happen in limited. It for sure will happen in limited, but
only a few of these have like conditions that are kind of interruptible, because like I believe the one that I was talking about earlier, the 1-drop white one, is like you've gained 5 life. It's impossible to to lose. Yeah, you can't just be like okay, you never gained it.
Yeah, but there are ones where it's like if you have this many creatures,
right? Exactly,
and that
now
is
kill
like
spells are good.
Yeah, then I did kill your creature, so you no longer have 3, you have 2.
Mm. So only certain ones you can interfere with, but if you can interfere and you're scared of it, most likely you're going to want to do that.
Yeah. So once the case becomes solved, it stays solved until it leaves the battlefield. Cases don't lose their own abilities when they become solved. Their other abilities, they don't lose their other abilities. Being solved is not part of a permanent's copiable values. A permanent that becomes a copy of a solved case is not solved. A solved case that somehow becomes a copy of a different case still stays solved.
Ooh, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah, breaks my brain a little bit, but the people on the internet hearing this will over and over again, you'll get it. You'll get it before I do. That's it for solved cases. The new keyword action that we have, which I'm super psyched about. I think it's going to change the game a lot.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but collect evidence is really interesting, and I think it's kind of hype.
Yeah, and the card I picked, and so you know, as listeners, by the way, is that like Wizards has like an example card, and then I specifically go, that would be really lame if all the example cards were the example cards that Wizard chose. So I choose different ones for us to read because I don't want to like take the easy route.
Well, not to mention like if you read the article, it's not really you're gonna just gloss over it. You know, at least hear something different.
Right. And I picked this card specifically because like I'm hoping that there's like some kind of special workings that could happen with Arc-like Phoenix. Maybe might work against it because of, you know,
I'm kind of
like Treasure Cruise. But anyway,
yeah.
Lamplight Phoenix, 1 red, flying 3/3. When Lamplight Phoenix dies, you may exile it and collect evidence 4. If you do, return Lamplight Phoenix to the battlefield tapped.
Oh, that's really cool.
I think it is really cool. And I'm like, man, if you could do like Phoenix synergies together, it does obviously work against like Treasure Cruise.
Why? Treasure Cruise is 8-drop.
Right. It is, but I'm saying like if you're exiling cards, it's harder for you to cruise.
No, exile the Treasure Cruise.
Yes, like you could exile itself. Yes, you could exile itself. But I'm saying like you usually want to fill your bin to do your delving.
That's true, but like if you delve with like lands and like 1-drops, then you're fine.
Yeah.
And you just evidence with like the really expensive ones. I actually think this is really legit.
Phoenix Tribal.
It's so funny because I was pulling an order today for somebody and they ordered Rekindling Phoenix. And I was like, man, this card was so awesome back in the day. Rekindling Phoenix, 4 mana, 4/3 flying. If it died, you got an egg. And if the egg was still there on your upkeep, you got to return the Phoenix. And it gained haste, I believe. That card was such a house in its standard. And nobody plays it in Pioneer. And I kind of get that it contests with Shieldred, so like it has to be like good,
right?
But like nobody's playing it at all. Like that's kind of crazy. So like I don't know. I just feel like maybe I'm tripping, but I want to kind of try that card in Pioneer. But that card just seems even better.
Yeah, it seems sweet. Yeah. So hoping for some Phoenix Tribal. The next keyword action that we have is suspect. Our example is Clandestine Meddler. This vampire gentleman is very dapper, and I want his outfit. But anyway, what the card says: it is 2 and a black. It's a vampire rogue. When Clandestine Meddler enters the battlefield, suspect up to 1 other target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more suspected creatures you control attack, Surveil 1. So, suspect, what it says is a suspected creature has menace and can't block. I am so excited for this mechanic because there's different interactions where you want to suspect your own creatures to like give them menace, but then they're no longer blockers. So it's kind of like in the Rakdos suspect aggro strategy that like Wizards has put as like an archetype.
Right.
But there are also moments where like you can just suspect your opponent's creatures and then make them like, cool, your dude has menace. I don't care because I'm aggro. I just want your creature to not block.
Right. Yeah.
And like that to me is like really interesting gameplay.
Yeah, it's cool because it's like both sides, but the symmetry is not there. It's like your guy doesn't block. My guy is hard to block. It's like, oh man.
Yeah.
But it has like interesting gameplay with like how the detectives work too. So I just really like what the limited format is starting to look like.
Yeah. So the first thing that's important to know is that, right, I did say what suspect does, but beyond that, a creature will stay suspected until it leaves the battlefield or another effect causes it to no longer be suspected. So if you flicker it or return it to your hand, it's no longer suspected, but like if it dies too and you reanimate it, no longer suspected. That's all good, right, and fine, but or if a card says this card is no longer a suspected card.
Right.
Because otherwise it just stays. It's permanent.
I think there's also cards too that will have like boons if you're like, oh, if you kill a suspected creature, X, Y, and Z bonus, or certain cards are easier to kill as a result of being suspected. It's just like a really interesting mechanic overall. Like giving a guy like an extra trait, but that's not like necessarily a class. Kind of almost works like the like keyword tokens, if you will, where like you can put like a token of flying or a token of whatever.
Yeah, which I'm super annoyed about because I do not want like any more of like those little plastic cardboard that like you have to like when you had to put a shield counter on something that like came in the box. Ugh, I hated those.
Those were definitely the absolute worst.
And so we're getting this again. We're gonna get those again. Thank you, Wizard.
Wizards has good ideas and they have bad ideas.
Yeah, like I like the mechanic, but like is having
the pre-release kit, like
little cut ups. Yeah, I hate those. The worst. But anyway, with that being said, if suspected creatures lose all abilities, it will lose menace, and this creature can't block, but it won't stop being suspected. So, like, if you suspect a creature and something causes it to lose abilities, it's still a suspected creature. Right. It just loses the menace and loses the can't block. Being suspected isn't a copyable ability. I said copyable earlier, and now I feel like an idiot. Being suspected isn't a copyable ability. If a permanent becomes a copy of a suspected creature, it won't be suspected. If a creature is already suspected, suspecting it again won't have any effect. There's no limit to the number of creatures that can be suspected simultaneously. Suspecting a new creature doesn't cause any other creatures to stop being suspected. I know you already said this once, and I'm sorry to interrupt the podcast. Shut up. We're positive over on Tales from the Tap.
All right, the peanut gallery is getting a little loud.
The podcast gets them excited. What can we say? That's all we have for mechanics. Thank you for tuning in. That will be the end of the episode. Have a good night. No. Archetypes, and this is according to Wizards because we know Sam Black's going to do his own thing and make crazy stuff. And we know, right, like we have to take all these archetypes with a grain of salt because like though Wizards is like saying this is what we want them to do, all of their like sometimes their archetypes like aren't well supported. Like they say that this is what they're going to be, but I forget, was it Woe that did like blue-white tap, and it was just like garbage, unplayable. You can't do it.
Hey, the blue-white cards were good,
right? But you couldn't
tap was not it.
Was not it. Yeah, it was not a thing. You couldn't play any of those cards, unplayable garbage. So like, anyway, the point being, there is blue-white detectives, blue-black clues control. That's what I want to be playing. Suspect aggro in red-black. Red green big disguise creatures that then are big red green like normal, but like the phrasing of that confuses me. Is like the disguise big? No, it's like big
Just
creature,
big
big
right.
stompy, just with the flavor of disguise. Green white is go wide disguise. Shocker,
Green, white
never been done before.
No way. Absolutely not.
Black white is pint size disguise. So aristocrats. These names are cute, wizards.
I guess like the one white card you brought up is like a 2-drop with like 2 mana disguise ability. So it's not a big creature. It doesn't get bigger, but it has like its weird quirky ability that we thought was pretty strong.
Right, which is usually like black white anyway. It's like the creatures are small, but they've got like cool abilities because we're aristocrats.
Every time.
Then blue red artifact sacrifice.
Again? What? I mean, not again. New and interesting.
Green black grave break.
What? Golgari graveyard deck. Okay, nice.
Red white battalion.
Red white battalion, you say? Wow. Wait a minute. Okay, to be fair, Ravnica set.
Okay. To be fair, Ravnica. And then it's blue-green collect evidence, which I'm praying. I forget what set it was. It might
be like a not terrible Simic.
It wasn't Theros. I think it was maybe Innistrad, like one of the recent Innistrads, not like old school Innistrad, where like there were decks that were really trying to like make clues. Oh, this is collect evidence. Blue-green collect evidence. I'm sorry. I was going to say like, oh man, you could do like blue things again in blue-green.
I thought you were going to talk about Delirium from like Shadows and Elvish Moon.
No,
I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
No. There was like because blue-green traditionally, and it was actually shown statistically, is the worst limited archetype around. Like there's like the win percentages and like blue-green is like below 50% and it's the only one.
That's why I always draft it.
And so I was hoping like maybe this time, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case.
Well, like Simic had its time to shine from like 2019 to like 2021. So if they go back to being bad again, it's just like classic Simic. Like OG Ravnica block, Simic was like grafting, just terrible. And then we went to like what were the Simic players doing during Return to Ravnica? It was just the worst. Like Urban Evolution, just like 4 or 5 mana counter spell, but I get to like, I don't know, it's like I think they had like a 5 mana drain. Like, oh, cool, thanks, man. Poor Simic players. It's just, at least collecting evidence seems like a strong mechanic.
Yeah. That's it for
archetypes and mechanics.
Yeah. Now it's time to get into like the stuff that people get excited about for Magic, and that is like, hey, what's the best commons and uncommons, and what should be like the majority of what my decks will be for pre-release. So keep in mind, if you've not seen one of our episodes before for pre-release, I pick these cards based on what I think will be good, regardless of the archetype that you're playing in. And so these are like, hey, I think these will be solid picks no matter what archetype you're in. If it's white, it should be good in most white decks regardless.
Right.
So that's where we're starting with. And then I've got some, of course, honorable mentions where I'm like, this card will be cracked in this archetype, but
context, nuance, etc.
Yeah, nuance, etc. So the first one that we're going to start with is Museum Night Watch. Museum Night Watch, and we're in white, by the way. White commons, Museum Night Watch. When a Museum Night Watch dies, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. It has disguise for 1 and a white. It costs 4 mana regularly, 3 and a white, and it is a 3/2. So it is a 3/2 that when it dies, you make a 2/2, and it is a detective, which does matter for the detective archetype, and you can disguise it as well. So it's got some, like, if disguise matters and you flipping a card matters, it's good. But it's also just like a 3 mana. I mean, I guess it is 4 mana. But regardless, it's a 3/2 that then when it dies, it makes a 2/2. A body that makes a body.
Yeah, in white, those mechanics are not really ever bad. Plus, you get the detective boon. Like, if you're in detectives, that's going to matter. But if you play it face down and you block with it, somebody might not be afraid necessarily to attack or block into it. because it's just a 2/2, and then you flip it over, you're like, surprise, I'm not losing a guy.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's got the thing that trades up, and like specifically, like let's talk mechanics just for a hot second. Like cloak, I was trying to look at other cloak cards in this set, and I don't know if it's going to be like a better thing in Commander, but I thought I only saw like a couple, like 2 was what I could find when I was like Googling cloak cards. And so I don't think
that's kind of how it was with Megamorphs. So
yeah, so I don't think that that's like super what's the phrase? Supported, but I do think that like from what I've seen of detectives and blue-white detectives, like detectives matters is a supported mechanic. Like detectives mattering is like there's a lot of them. So
yeah, maybe the cloaking matters more for like the commander decks. I didn't get a chance to look at them all yet, but from just watching some of the spoilers, the commander decks are cracked.
Yeah.
Next card is Novice Inspector, I believe.
Yes. So the next one being Novice Inspector. Novice Inspector is
back.
It's Thraben Inspector, just new. So it's
they're new on the job.
A 1 mana, 1/2. When Novice Inspector enters the battlefield, investigate.
It's so cool that we're getting Thraben Inspector back because one, miss playing with that card. That card was in one of the best standards of all time, in my opinion. It was such a fun card to play with. 2, it's like now that you can like play maybe 8 with him in Pioneer, you know, like it's not like necessarily something you're gonna want to do. Like just the fact that you have like multiple versions of like the same card is always something that I find interesting for like either Commander or like Soul Sisters is like a good example of like if you make more of these, we will find ways to play them. Also, we're seeing a lot of like 2-for-1 cards nowadays where like Bullet Tide Harvester is really good, etc. And I think Thraben Inspector and this guy are both good. So like if your deck ends up wanting 4 copies, now you can just do like a 2/2 split, and all of a sudden it's got different names, whatever.
Right. Plus, you know, you're welcome for maybe Boros Convoke needed more Thraben Inspectors. So now it's like you've got different copies for Gleeful Demolition.
But like even for standard, hypothetically, now obviously this is not going to happen. But let's say you're playing Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and like I play Pithing Needle, and I just like have to name your Thraben Inspector, like Pioneer or something.
Sure.
You're like, okay, cool. Well, I got the other one, you know. So like, it's kind of like when you play like in Legacy when they play like 6 different fetch lands, even though they only need like Verdant Catacombs and Polluted Delta, but they have to play like all the different black ones just in case you turn 1 Pithing Needle them off of a fetch land. So like it just kind of reminds me of that.
Oh, geez. Man,
bless you.
Getting late already.
Next card is Hazda Vigilante.
Yeah, I think that this card is so hot. I originally looked at it and was like, this is going to be my hot take card. But then I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe this card's just good. So Hazda Vigilante is a 4 and a white giant soldier. When Hazda Vigilante enters the battlefield or attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control with power 2 or less. So it's a 4/4. So 4/4 for 5. When it ETBs, put a counter on something that has power 2 or less. And when it attacks, put something on that is power 2 or less. 1. There are a lot of creatures in the set that are 2 or less. Just generally. Like the stats on the bodies of cards are already low. But because you have so many like disguised creatures that you're then flipping, all of them are 2/2s. So you can then just put counters on all your disguise stuff and then flip them to keep counters.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that that's good. And a body late game that just has the, like, if it sticks, attack, put a counter, attack, put a counter, attack, put a counter. It's going to be really annoying to deal with. And we've generally found that, like, within the limited format, 4/4 bodies are hard to deal with just generally from a removal perspective.
Just being a 4/4 already is really high impact.
So I think that it will have a lot of use and it will be a pain.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And like you said, it's just going to work with the 2/2s. The more we keep talking about it, though, I know this is a standard take, but we were already talking about this off the podcast where I was like, Cutdown's going to be a 4 of, but like, wow, Cutdown is going to be like really, really good. Because it's like the only thing that can answer these Ward 2 2/2s is like a 1-drop. So it's like, oh my god. I mean, I already didn't like Cutdown format, but now it is Cutdown format.
Right. And you don't have really like Planeswalkers to play Tomic in like limited, but if you still like have like it's a good enough body to have a 3 mana 2/4 with flying, and that if you have 2 creatures attack you, like you get this ability. But then with this guy, you can just make it a 3/5.
Yeah. And I think there was a couple of cards too that were like Mentor of the Make style, where they were like, oh, power 2 or less creatures bonuses of some kind. And this kind of guy even likes to play with the new Impact Tremors card if you're playing Boros, where you're like, oh, my guys come in. Sure, the Anthem kind of hurts it, but now you got the Impact Tremors, and if you're getting a bunch of 1/1s, you can still put the counters on them and then just flinging damage at them. Like that kind of archetype just seems crazy. This guy's gonna like detectives. This guy's gonna like everything.
Yeah. So I think it's just gonna be. I think it'll just be good. The last one is for comments is my honorable mention, and it's Griffknot Tracker. It's a 3 and a white flying. When Griffknot Tracker enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. It is a 3/2. 3/2 flyer for 4 we found with any other text is usually like not a bad card, but it is a detective, which does matter. The other thing that I think really matters is we are going to have decks that care about collecting evidence.
Yes.
And when you can go, I'm going to exile your cards for you, it's cracked. But there are also a lot of, specifically like within Black and within, just there are cards that you get rewarded if a card left your graveyard this turn. And so like you can exile your own stuff to get upside for those cards.
Oh yeah.
So cards caring about cards leaving your graveyard on this turn, like you'll get a payoff. They'll want this card too.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of reasons why I'm like, oh, this card is going to be a sleeper for sure, because you can use it against your opponent. You can use it yourself for like some kind of bonuses. I think that it will matter.
Yeah, and on rate, like you said, on rate body with keyword or with the ability to have upside is pretty good just on its own, and it has an ability.
Yeah. Moving into uncommons. The first is Perimeter Enforcer. I think this card is messed up. I literally put like what the for this card in our notes. Okay, so Perimeter Enforcer, 1 and a white, human detective, flying with lifelink. It's a 1/1. Whenever another detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, Perimeter Enforcer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If you're playing in a detective deck, or you're playing against a detective deck, and you see this guy in the battlefield, you're like, I'm in danger.
Yeah.
Flying lifelink, it's 1/1s every time a detective enters or is turned face up.
This is a good example of the cards too that benefit from the Hazda Vigilante, where this guy can get up to 3 power from the 2 counters you put on it if you are able to keep it around. And 3 power is already kind of scary for flyers, as we've seen with like Dragon Rage Channeler, Delver of Secrets, etc. And it has lifelink. Like this card is kind of cracked.
Yeah. Correct. Have mercy. Next one is Kravad Haunch. I love the look of this card. It's literally like this giant piece of like meat.
It literally looks like something I'd catch in Conan Exiles.
Yeah. So 1 mana. Artifact, food, equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/0. You can pay 2 mana and sack it to gain 3 life like you do for food anyway. When it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a white. If you do, create 2 1/1 white dog creature tokens, and it's equipped to. I think that this card just does too many things. Like, you can equip it to a dude to like have +2/0. There is a tokens deck in green-white, so you can just sack it. You can also just sack it for life, too. It makes bodies on hitting the graveyard. You can gain the 3 life. Like, you can just... There's so much that this card does. And it's 1 mana.
Yeah.
A 1 mana equipment.
This card is definitely kind of cracked. It's like for limited specifically, this card is kind of nuts.
It just does too much.
If you're playing it, though, in green-white, like, holy moly. I mean, like a lot of times you're just gonna have like this equip thing where like if you're racing somebody, you're like, cool, I'm gonna keep this thing. We're gonna keep bashing.
Right, like
and as soon as I need the life,
put it on the last flyer. Like then just
put it on your detective guy.
Whip it on the flyer.
Yeah, what a nutty card.
Yeah, and it's kind of like special flavor as well, because we're in the realm of like there's all these uncommon equipments that like are the weapon. This big hawk of meat is the weapon.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not to mention, we should actually note that for all the equipment cards we mentioned, if you end up being suspected, having that extra power on Menace is just going to be even that much more disgusting.
Yes. Yes. Next is Forum Familiar and Forum Familiar. Where you be at there? One, it's a cat eating a hawk, which we were just talking about the hawk. I didn't plan that in order, so I feel proud. It's 1 mana cat creature with disguise 2. When Forum Familiar is turned face up, return another target permanent you control to its owner's hand and put a 1/1 on Forum Familiar. So
that's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's a 1/1 that you can turn face up to like get a counter and also bounce a card to your hand. It's you want to save your creature from being killed,
right?
Just bounce it and get a counter on your dude. Or you care about ETBs, then this also matters for that as well.
It's gonna suck so bad too. Like when they try to kill your other disguise guy, they already have to pay the ward, and then you're like, bounce him.
Right.
Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
This card is cool.
It's a 1 mana 1/1 that has other text. So it's just like good card.
Yeah, everything in these colors is just gonna have 1 power and just be gross because of it.
Right. And then the last, it's like I put a side note. One of the cards I did not include because like it's just an obvious card and it's not like fun is the Not on My Watch. 1 and a white instant exile target attacking creature. Just good.
Yeah.
It's just good removal for 2.
It's an uncommon too?
Yep.
Yeah, like that's kind of gross.
It's good and boring. Not exciting to talk about. Anyone who's reading that card is like, oh, that card is.
I wonder if that's good.
Yeah, no one's, unless you're really new to Magic. Which, if you are, welcome. Card's good, just so you know. The real honorable mention I had was Case of Pilfered Proof. It's one of the cases. 1 and a white, and I think this is specific like to the detective deck. Whenever a detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, put a 1/1 counter on it. To solve, you control 3 or more detectives. That was what we were talking about earlier if you're like removing cards.
Yeah.
If you solve this, if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a clue token are created instead.
Oh, that's really good. And detectives and probably even green-white.
Correct.
Wow. That's kind of nasty. Obviously, contextually, like it has to go in these decks.
Right.
But if you get the payoff, especially if you can get the detectives in green-white, wow. That's pretty gross.
Julio.
Next thing we're going for is the blue.
Yes. So the first one is like also not an exciting one, but I was like,
I mean, people have been talking about it, but they do whenever there's a blue card that says draw a card.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
every blue cantrip ever, it's like, is this good? Are we replacing ops?
Yeah. So it's 1 in a blue, instant, draw a card, and investigate. So it's draw a card, and then you make a token, which matters for the sacking tokens deck. It also matters for if you draw your second card per turn, which is in this set as well.
I've heard of people talking about this being good for modern, specifically for Indomitable creativity. Like, that's kind of cute. If it ends
draw
up
a card, and then you have a token to.
Here's my thing I
creativity.
needed, but I'm making the token on your end step. That'd be interesting.
Yep.
It's not necessarily better than what you're already doing with Fetch Land into Dwarvenmine.
Yeah, not necessarily better, but it's a common.
Yeah, it is
a common. So, like, you could get a lot of it for limited specifically.
Yeah, I mean, this card obviously for limited is going to be just a house. Like, if you're in those, I mean, every blue deck's going to want to be making clues and just drawing cards in limited.
Yeah,
it's always good.
Yeah, the next card is a very obvious card as well. It is a detective, so it does matter for detectives. 3 in a blue, flying, spirit detective, Cold Case Cracker is the name of the card. When Cold Case Cracker dies, investigate. So it's just a 4 mana, 3/3 flyer that when it dies, you'll get token.
Yeah.
All
the boons of being a detective.
Right. And people are going to want to kill it because it's a 3/3 flyer.
I mean, with the enchantment you talked about, this is already a 4/4 flyer. So, like, very, very disgusting.
Yeah. And again, for decks like the artifact deck, that like artifact sacrifice, you'll want it there too. The last one I put is Reasonable Doubt. This is actually the card I'm most excited about. The reason being, Reasonable Doubt is 1 and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 for 2 mana, but then suspect up to 1 target creature. I think that this is exciting for me because you have the ability to play around with, oh, I can then have the upside of this counter spell of like making one of my creatures not have the ability to block, or giving one of my creatures like menace, then it can't block, but also for like other decks, like if you're playing on an aggro plan, or you're like close to getting lethal, like you can suspect one of their creatures.
Yeah.
And that flexibility is really exciting for me within deck build.
Yeah, it's definitely a sweet card. It's like this type of card usually kind of exists already, where it's like a make disappear, like a really just bad counter spell, if you will, where they can pay the mana for it. But like this upside on it is actually reasonable, and it plays into the color pies pretty well for what these archetypes are trying to do, especially the blue eye control deck.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it. I think that it allows for some interesting gameplay to happen.
I mean, putting menace on that flying guy we just talked about, it's kind of gross.
Yeah. The next one is Burden of Proof. Burden of Proof is 1 and a blue enchantment with flash. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's a detective you control. Otherwise, it has base power and toughness of 1/1 and can't block detectives. So it's a card that like you can, if you don't want anything else from it, you can just shrink one of your opponent's creatures, make it a 1/1, and then if you have detectives, cool, they can't jump block with it.
When the spoilers started, this was one of the first cards that got spoiled, and I didn't talk about it at all that last episode because it just didn't seem exciting at all. But they hadn't really spoiled that many detectives. After seeing the whole list and how many good detectives there are, this card is so much better. Like we talked about, the blue light control deck can just flip it around and turn aggro so fast with this card and the counter spell, giving your flying guys menace. It's a detective, it's menace, +2/+2. And then if you get a guy that's just scary for me, actually it's not. Like this card is kind of like, I keep saying kind of gross for every card, but this one really is like, wow. Like, because like you already kind of play the 1/2 mana flash pacifism, or turn your guy into a nothing,
A frog.
Yeah, exactly. Like these kind of cards are already good without the upside,
right?
And this one just has it all in the archetype that really wants it,
right? Because I think that before you would only want to play like one of those conditional, like it was just make something a pirate in the last one. I forget the name of it, or a piranha. You turned it into a piranha, eaten by piranhas. The name of the card. Yes, still on my streak of remembering things. But what I like about it is that you didn't want that in every deck. And it definitely, like, you didn't want to play multiples, even in decks where it was kind of good. But this card is like, oh, I could be happy playing multiples of this, especially in a humans deck, or like in a control deck, I still could have use for it. So it's like giving a card that was already in Magic the modality of being like, oh, this is now valuable in multiple scenarios. And like that excites me for Magic.
Right. The only thing that will suck is if you aren't playing detectives and have this for some reason because your removal was so bad, and then you play against detectives, you just lost.
Yes, that's the only time where this is going to be like truly terrible. Yeah. The next one is Curious Inquiry. Curious Inquiry is 1 enchantment aura, 1 blue. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature does combat damage to a player, investigate.
This one's really good.
We've seen it a lot, but
I like how it's Curious Inquiry because it's like Curious Obsession, Curiosity,
right.
All like the hit you, I draw a card. This one's like, oh, actually, I'd like to draw a card.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And what's great about it too is that like it is a mana sink and like could see constructed play. Like maybe you want to play this over Curious Obsession because you don't have to attack it with your creature.
Well, there's already like mono blue artifact decks happening in standard right now. If you have a reason to be like, let's say you're making constructs somehow. If you have a reason to have like want to have the artifact instead of just straight up drawing the card, this is maybe potentially better. Let's, for the sake of argument, let's say it's not better than Curiosity. Like on paper, like, oh, I have a Siren Storm Tamer or whatever it's called. I want to draw a card every time I hit you, like a Malcolm, for example. This is at least conditional draw with the bonus of if I'm playing artifacts, like wow, I'm really getting it. I think Unlimited specifically too, where making the tokens, making all those artifacts going wide might end up mattering. I mean, just in standard alone, I could see myself wanting a clue more than a card if I have Zoetic Glyph, and now I'm just like, cool, I made the guy that this clue is gonna be a 5/4 now, and I'm bashing face.
Yeah. I just also think, right, specifically like for the archetypes, red, blue artifacts.
Yes.
It's like jazzed about this, but you'll play this in other decks too, because you're like, it's just a buff that like can give me card draw.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when we talked about the card last episode with Gleaming Gear Drake, the new Is It guy, specifically for this archetype. He gets bigger when you sack artifacts. So like he doesn't want you to draw cards, he wants you to sack artifacts and then draw cards. So like this is kind of specifically designed even for that guy. I mean, you might put this directly on the Gear Drake itself.
Yeah. Next we have Exit Specialist. It's 1 in blue, human detective. Exit Specialist can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater, and it has Disguise 1 in a blue. When Exit Specialist is turned face up, return another target creature to its owner's hand. Your creatures could be their creatures, and it's a 2/1.
Yeah. This guy's kind of interesting. I like that his toughness is lower than his power because he's still going to be blockable for profit most likely. But if you get counters on this guy somehow, or that detective +2/+2 thing, all of a sudden this guy's like never like taking a trade for like break even. It's always just going to crush whatever's blocking it, or it's just going to get through because they don't want to block it. Or worse, you suspect it, and then it still can't be blocked except by the little guys. So like, yeah, this guy seems kind of scary. And it's a detective, so.
Well, and it does the bounce thing. You want to bounce your own? Sure. You want to bounce their stuff?
Right.
Sure. Like, you want this in your aggro deck because you have the ability to be like, it's a 2/1 for 2. That's also a detective. It does have like limitations on what can block it. And then you can do bounce shenanigans with it? Too much.
Is it bounce non-land permanent or creature?
Target creature.
Yeah. Okay,
another target creature to its owner's hand.
That's fair. That makes sense, actually. Because I was going to say, like, imagine you're playing against a guy with that detective enchantment. You make one of their guys a 1/1 because he's a problem. But then later on, you're like, oh, I'm actually winning now because I can bounce my enchantment back and then give my guy the power. But it doesn't work, unfortunately. But still, bouncing creatures for this low of a cost and the body itself being really powerful and almost unblockable, very, very strong.
Yeah. The last one I have is Mistway Spy. It's my honorable mention. 1 blue, creature, merfolk detective, flying, disguise, 1 in a blue. When Mistway Spy is turned face up, until end of turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, investigate. And it's a 1/1. Flying 1/1.
Oh, there's a lot of these guys. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so alone,
Merfolk's also pretty interesting too.
And off itself, it has the ability to, probably because it's evasive, get in to make the
even just as a 1-mana
1/1,
this is pretty good. Like investigating, no problem. Like I like this a lot.
Yeah, I think cards, and it's a detective.
Mm-hmm.
More detectives.
I wonder if that'll be a reason for the mid-range decks to switch to Dimir. Instead of like Esper for like whatever reason, or maybe it's even blue-white, like Azorius soldiers. Now it's like Azorius detectives. But like we'll see. It's a really interesting card, and definitely like Subterranean Schooner.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting card. And by the way, I didn't mention that when I went to Burden of Proof, Curious Inquiry, Exit Specialist, these are all uncommons. I just didn't even say that they're uncommons. Apologies. I just went right in from commons to uncommons. So yeah, know that. But now that we're done with blue, man, I'm adding a lot. We gotta get through.
We're gonna just start powering through, but this is time for the black cards.
Yeah, time for black cards. So
first one coming up is called Slice from the Shadows.
Yeah, Slice from the Shadows is a X black instant. The spell can't be countered. Target creature gets -X until end of turn. Just a good removal.
That's a good removal spell.
Good removal for black, but
uncounterable. Super good right now.
Yeah, uncounterable. And the -X is that like you can hold it for whatever you need, which I think is sweet.
It's a good combat trick too.
Yeah. Next one is the Snarling Gorehound. It's 1 black. It's a dog creature with menace.
This card is so funny.
Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, surveil 1.
Did you see Aspiring Spike's tweet?
No.
He said, how come this card doesn't get +2/+2 in flying?
So
it's so funny.
So just a shout out to DRC.
Yeah, just a shout out to Darcy. But
Yeah.
oh my gosh. I mean, this card is still very good. Like, just anytime your little guys are entering, surveilling, it is a 1-drop, 1/1 menace. This guy really, really likes Subterranean Schooner and stuff like that. So I don't know. I really like this card a lot.
Yeah, well, I also
And
just,
even Gix.
right. I just think too specifically with this card, like we have to keep remembering that it's not just all the creatures that have low power anyway. It's also all of the disguise stuff.
Yeah.
All of the disguise stuff
Every single disguise.
does trigger this effect. So in green, black general does have some type of graveyard shenanigans.
Oh,
so
that's such a good point.
surveilling is good. With like the surveil is usually going to be upside for you.
Yeah. Every time.
So
Very.
it does a lot. The last one for the commons in black is the Unscrupulous Agent. This card we see in every single set. I do think the artwork is pretty cool for it. It is an elf detective, 1 in a black, 1/1 when elf Unscrupulous Agent enters the battlefield, target opponent exiles a card from their hand.
Gross.
I think there's going to be a lot of recursion in this set. Like there is a card specifically like that I didn't write down, but I want to talk about it for a moment. Macabre Reconstruction. This is a 4-mana, 3 in a black. This spell costs 2 less to cast if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn. So it costs 2 less. It can be 2 mana. And it's returned up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So if you're doing any sacrifice shenanigans, or if you're just chumping, I mean, you can't chump. I mean, you're not chumping at sorcery speed, but if you're sacking a creature, if you're attacking in with it or sacrificing it, then you can be like 2 mana, return that exile card back to my hand. We've seen that any exile cards or discard cards that get reanimated, like especially in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, that snail, that like if you did the 3 mana, mill 2, bring 2 cards back to your hand, when that card hits a second time because you've recurred it, becomes really annoying.
Yeah.
And I think the same is going to be true of that detective.
Very true.
And it's usually good in most sets. So, plus, you know, Jeremy just played his like brain maggot list this past week. Another one for you. You're welcome.
I was about to say the same thing. Like, what if you played 8 of these in standard? Like, oh boy.
Vomit. Don't like it. Moving on to uncommons. The first one is called Night Drinker Mori. Night Drinker Mori is a 4-mana, 3 in a black vampire flying. When Night Drinker Mori enters the battlefield, you lose 3. And it's a flying 4/2. With disguise 2 double black. So what I think is crazy is that you can disguise this and get a 2 mana, or I'm sorry, you can put it down on for 3 as like a ward creature, and then at any point you can just for 2 mana turn it face up, and you've got a 4/2 flyer,
right? Without having taken the 3 life.
Yeah.
Or you just play it on 4 and you're like, whatever, eat the 3 life. I have a 4-power flyer. What are you gonna do about it?
Right. So I just think that this card is sweet.
Yeah, card is nasty. And like all these high power guys with low toughness. Keep in mind, like we're suspecting. All of a sudden, you put an equipment in this guy. He's suspected. He's a 6-power flyer. You need 2 flyers to block it. It's kind of gross.
Yeah. Next one is Leering Onlooker. Leering Onlooker is 1 in a black. Flying, vampire 1/3. You can pay 4 mana, 2 and 2 black, exile Leering Onlooker from your graveyard, create 2 tapped black bat creature tokens with flying. It's just a
I love that
1/3 flyer for 2 that also has the upside of exile from your graveyard to get 2 tapped flyers.
I like that there's some of this stuff as well mixed in with the evidence too. So it's like your exile cards, like the white guy we talked about, like are really, really high impact. Like it's not just evidence that they're collecting. You also want to get rid of these graveyard abilities, like the Very Dream Thief or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and on top of it, you can surveil with the dog and be like, oh, I don't need this card. I'll put it into my graveyard. Now I can also get 2 bats later.
Yeah.
Good body, good rate, just cheap. Another boring one that's really obvious. Long Goodbye, 1 and a black, instant. The spell can't be countered. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less.
Talked about it before. Also, this card has cut down the answer as it ignores the ward. So you can actually kill all these disguisers.
Oh man, I've been annoyed by like Graveyard Trespasser in Standard. So,
I mean, even necessarily for Pioneer, I think Long Goodbye is going to be a playable card in Pioneer for sure.
Yeah, well, or like this could be your better answer to Rafine.
That is true as
cut down, because cut down sometimes feel bad into Rafine.
Yeah.
Long Goodbye.
Good point.
Don't pay your ward. I love not paying ward. It's like probably one of my favorite things in Magic is being like, I don't have to pay ward. Love it.
Resolves.
This last one is what I would describe as another kind of hot takey one. It's not that hot takey because the card I think is just hot. Soul Enervation. It's a 3 and a black enchantment with flash. When Soul Enervation enters the battlefield, target creature gets -4 and -4 until end of turn. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain. So again,
that's really nice.
Graveyard exiling, or like you using that bat lady and exiling her to get the 2 bats, and then you've got the upside of you drain 1, gain 1.
Well, it's also a flash removal spell, right? Like this is actually really nice. It's not just like a weird draining gain. It's a card I might play anyway, and then a draining gain,
and then a draining gain, like stamped on top of it. Like,
and this is so good in green black when you're collecting evidence. This probably is just disgusting when you're collecting evidence.
Yep, and that's why I thought like if collecting evidence is good, which I think it will be, this card is just great.
Yeah, agreed.
That's
gonna be me after I play against that. Presume dead. For those that are just listening, I'm pointing at Frank's screen as he's going through Mythic Spoiler.
Yeah. Next, let's move on to red, and I just clicked on something that I shouldn't have.
Red's got the commons, and the next one is Gearbane Orangutan.
Yeah, I love this little. Or I love that we have.
I don't know why I rhymed it.
Yeah, orangutan. It's 2 and a red. It's not actually. It could not be an orangutan because even though it looks like an orangutan, the creature type is ape.
Speaking of ape, did I tell you about the toxicity on Arena?
No.
So I'm playing against this guy on Arena. Really fun story. I promise it's worth it. And I accidentally slow play him because I'm playing Arena while I'm running the shop. So somebody asked for help at register.
Sorry, continue.
Well, I mean, I'm accidentally BMing him as in like, it is what it is. I thought I hit pass turn or auto pass or whatever. That button never works on Arena anyway. Shout out to Watsy. I go to help this customer, ring him out for his sleeves, come back, I'm roping the guy. It's been like a minute. I'm like, oh, my bad. And he's like, your go. You know what I mean? So then I'm like, pass the turn. My fault. And then he draws. I have a huge board state, 4 cards in hand. He has lands, no cards in hand. I think it's like a domain mirror. Top text Cavernous Soul. And then he goes, Cavernous Soul, ape, head explode. I was like, oh my God. I was put in my place today. Like I literally felt like Kaiba in the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh, where he's like, I was just completely destroyed.
The hottest, most clever BM I've heard.
It was good. I was like, faith restored in the Magic community. Like that one really got me. I was laughing so hard, and then I started using it against people after that. Where like you're winning, you draw Cavernous Souls, you're like ape. It's just funny. I just thought it was hilarious. Anyways, 3 mana ape 2/2.
3 mana ape 2/2 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Destroy up to 1 target artifact. You can or sacrifice an artifact. If you do, put 2 counters on Gearbane Orangutan.
Gross. See, this is all these treasures. Are they here for a reason?
All these
3 mana 4/4 with reach.
Yeah. Well, 3 mana 4/4 with reach.
Now we're talking. That's really scary.
Cooking.
But I mean, even if you just destroy an artifact, just now they are not doing it to you.
Yep. It's just great.
Next one is Red Herring. I like the name of this card so much.
And look
So
at this
good.
beautiful little like
The art is
artifact.
amazing. It's actually
clue
a fish.
So it's 2 and a red artifact creature clue fish. Haste. Red Herring attacks each combat if able. You can also pay 2 and sacrifice Red Herring to draw a card, and it's a 2/2. So it
2 mana 2/2 with haste is already getting played in standard.
Already getting played, and then it does have the downside of attacks each combat if able. But if it's gonna attack, if it's gonna attack in a way that you feel is unfavorable, you're just like, cool, I'll just pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and draw a card.
Yeah, unlike actual clues, it looks like it doesn't tap to activate, which is funny.
Clues don't tap to activate now.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I'm thinking of treasures. You're right.
Yeah.
So it's just a literal clue. That is so cool.
It's just a literal clue.
Because like Felden doesn't block anyway, so it's like he has to attack every time, everywhere, anyway. And then what's the other one? The red one that you can pay 3 mana and then cast a spell. So that's a 5-drop. Thinking of mono red Stompy right now. Like red deck wins. They play Felden, 2 mana 2/2 can't block, and they have the vampire one that's like 2 mana 2/2 haste. When it enters the battlefield, you can pay red and 2 any number of times. And then for each time you did it, you can cast an instant sorcery from your graveyard.
Bloodthirsty Adversary?
Yeah, Bloodthirsty Adversary.
2.
Exactly. So when you play that guy, you're almost never getting the second payoff. But if you do, nice. And it happens sometimes. This guy is kind of like in the same vein as those two, where it's like 2 mana 2/2. I'm going to attack every time no matter what anyway. I have as much power as you want me to have. I'm an artifact, so maybe there's some like synergies there that weren't there before. If I attack with this guy on turn 2 after Kamano faces Kakazan, it's 3/3. I don't care anymore if you're blocking. I mean, this card is really cool.
Yeah, and then on top of that, what I really like is the fact that I'm thinking of standard. Are we just trying to make Oni Cult Anvil?
Yeah, right.
Like
exactly.
red artifact become
so
like it's getting close.
Crime
and
novelist.
you
Crime novelist.
Yeah, like you just go in with your like Voldaren Epicure and then immediately into Red Herring, and then you play your Oni Cult, and you're like, all right, I've got I'm cooking now.
I love Artifacts Matter right now so hard. I know you guys were memeing me when I was saying like Crime Novelist, Cranko stuff. I feel like there's something there. Like there's got to be something there.
Stan just over here seeing these cards being like,
I'm like literally like, it's gotta be good, guys. It's gotta be good. But when like Frank and Jillian are like building real decks, like, well, actually, Orzhov has Sunfall, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Whatever. I'm doing some.
I'm trying to have fun over here.
Yeah.
Next card is Felonious, or is it Felonious?
I think
Felonious.
It's Felonious.
Oh yeah, Felonious, because it's a felony.
Yeah.
Felonious Rage.
Yeah, this is a 1 instant. Target creature you control gets +2, 0, and haste until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token.
Not quite Monstrous Rage, but I do kind of like it.
Yeah, it's like you can decide to just use it as like a 1 mana +2, 0. But you can also be like, oh, my creature will for sure die. Yeah. Okay, at least I'm going to get a body back.
Oh, yeah, and limited for sure. This is disgusting. I actually really like this for limited specifically, because this kind of card we see a lot where it's like +2 power, 1 mana red all the time. What's the payoff? What makes it special for this set? And this guy giving you the guy back, it happens to be a detective as well, which we've already seen is like really important
and might be good for red-white.
It is a 2/2, which we've already seen. 2 is kind of the magic number with the set.
Yep.
I don't know, the card seems really powerful.
Yeah. Or imagine too, like if you do have a big body that like has trample and like it will die, you can like give it a little bit more damage to trample over with.
Yeah.
And then also make the 2/2 like.
Oh, you know what I realized? Why 2 is the magic number? Okay, so here's the thing. This story is not as interesting. You know who the murderer was?
No.
It was a third of Tristani. It was Oba, I believe. I think that's her name. One of the 3 Tristani dryads was like, oh man, I'm tired of all these Phyrexians. I'm going to start killing other guild leaders or something like that.
That's such a letdown.
It was the worst thing ever. So that's why 2 is the number, because there's only 2 of them left after the third one goes to jail, I guess.
Vomit. No one cares. Go find out your lore somewhere else. That's a different
sorry.
podcast. Next, we're going to get into uncommons for red. Harry Dronesmith. This is 4 and a red. Human Artificer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step.
That is so good.
Just wants artifacts, everyone.
That's so good.
Well,
also, like, you're sacking it anyway. Do stuff with it.
right. Blue-white or blue-red artifact sacrifice synergy.
Mhm.
This is like your staple card. That's
Yes.
like, okay, I'm going to do that
That
now.
card is also just like really good with the Gear Drake because you're just getting a free sack every turn. This guy's just going to get bigger and bigger, and that's going to break these mirrors.
Bing, bang, boom.
And it goes really well with the next card on the list.
Yeah,
My
your
boy.
favorite. He's been waiting.
Yeah, I wrote
the
you, but you're still in
whole
calling.
episode. We've got Prime Novelist. Prime Novelist is 2 and a red, Goblin Bard. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on Prime Novelist and add a red mana. It's a 1/3.
And now I understand why he's a 1/3. You want to have low power in this set. Like, it just makes sense.
Cooking.
Also, he's a novelist. He's not trying to hurt anybody. He's just
Yeah.
a tough guy.
But then he peeled off the mask, revealing a sight that made Roja's blood run cold.
It's like reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Brulu was actually Vogos in
Actually,
disguise.
I won't disrespect my boy. Crab Novel is probably writing actually good stuff.
Yeah, he's writing the real stuff. No, none of that smutty stuff.
For sure.
But
But yeah, no, obviously, like, all the artifact energies, this guy's just gonna make, like, even if at best it's just a rebate on your clues, and now your clues are 1 mana to activate, and you're just chaining through them for random sacrifice abilities, it's just gonna draw you more cards for less mana. At like worst. Really strong.
next is Reckless Detective, 1 in a red, Devil Detective. It's an 0/3. When Reckless Detective attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, draw a card, and Reckless Detective gets +2/0 until end of turn.
It's an L3.
It's an 0/3.
That's so funny.
It's an 0/3, but every time it attacks, you may sack or discard a card. If you do, you get to draw a card, and you get +2/0.
Interesting.
Low power.
Yeah.
It gives you your sacrifice payoffs for blue or whatever else. And it's a looter
Right.
by itself that then grows when it loots.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
It does too many things.
It does a lot. I actually think there's a reason why this is 0 power. Like, I feel like this is like a sleeper
It would
card.
be cracked otherwise.
Right.
Even as a 1/3, it'd be cracked.
Right.
Then the last one, actually, that was the last one. That was red.
That was the last one for red.
Cool. Let's move on to green. Green commons. The first one we have is the Vitu Ghazi Inspector. It is an elf detective, 1 in a green creature. As an additional cost to the spell, you may collect evidence 6. It has reach. When Gitu Ghazi Inspector enters the battlefield, if evidence was collected, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and you gain 2 life. Detective, you're collecting evidence, so it matters for all the things that care about collecting evidence.
Reach is really big in this set, too.
Reach, and
A lot of you
then
guys have reach.
you can put a 1/1 counter anywhere. It doesn't have to be on itself,
Yeah.
and it's got gain life.
The life gain's probably clutch, too. It's a 2-drop, too. It's like a 1 minute, or sorry, a 1/3 2-drop reach. Not bad. We've already seen that we want to kind of have low power for a reason anyway. Kind of abuse it in all your colors.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Really cool.
Next one is Tunnel Tipster.
Yeah, this little
snitching.
mole is super cute. 1 in a green mole scout. At the beginning of your end step, if a face down creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a counter on it,
Ooh.
and it's a mana dork.
Ooh.
Makes green mana.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
I was like not excited about these manifests, I'll be honest, or whatever disguisers. This is the kind of card that makes me happy to play disguise.
Yep, and
I mean, that's why the green white deck is doing this, so it makes sense.
yep, and right, always mana dorks that have upside later. We found out are good.
Yes, yeah.
This is the new guy with a gun.
Yeah, I like the
No,
poison
not
dart
the frog anymore. It's
The
the
frog
tunnel.
has death touch.
It's
though,
the
man.
tunnel tipster.
This guy definitely attacks better than the dart frog.
Oh yeah, attacks better than dart frog for sure.
Mhm. Next one is Rebel Belt Maverick.
Yes, Rubble Belt Maverick.
I love the Rebel Belt cards in Ravnica. All of them are so cool.
Roosevelt Maverick, human detective, 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. A 1/1 that ETB surveil 2, already probably close to being playable. But you may exile Roosevelt Maverick from your graveyard. You may put a 1/1 counter on target creature, activate as a sorcery.
That's solid, actually.
Dork, surveil 2.
Common?
Yep, common.
Wow.
And then you can just exile it from a graveyard.
Yeah, those are the kind of cards you pick up later as like I'm already in green-black in pack 2. You start picking those guys up. Oh.
Right. Plus, when cards leave your graveyard synergies, plus you're getting this upside.
Yeah.
It's just good.
Agreed. Moving on to the uncommons.
Yep.
What do we got? Green Belt Radical?
Yes. Green Belt Radical. It is 3 and a green Centaur Citizen with Disguise 7. 5 and 2 green. When Greenbelt Radical is turned face up, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn.
There it is.
And it's a 4/4. So it's a 5/5
when
it turns face up, and it's Crater Hoof?
Effectively. It's more like a N-Race Forerunners or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Because like N-Race Forerunners is like 2/2. I think Crater Hoof is based on how many creatures you have. But this is still nice. Like you're going super wide in the green-white deck, or you're going just tall in the monsters green-red deck, and then the trample's going to come through a clutch anyway. But this is really nice with that mold we just talked about, where you're like, I really need all that mana. The mold getting bigger, and then getting the trample is going to really nicely pay off.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of card you need to get early if you're going to commit to green-white, because you need to make sure you have the payouts before you start getting all these like go wide cards that don't really do anything.
I just realized why there are so many cards that say this can't be countered. Ward 2. All the disguise stuff is Ward 2.
Yeah.
I'm learning things in my own podcast.
That was the first thing I noticed when they announced. I was like, wow, these are like actual like good morphs. The fact that they have Ward 2 is really annoying.
Yeah.
Because the problem with morphs before was they were so easy to kill and you were investing a lot of mana into them. I like a lot of these disguisers because most of their costs are really low unless they have a really broken ability.
Yeah. Jeez. Next one is Sample Collector. 2 and a green. Troll Detective. Whenever Sample Collector attacks, you may collect evidence 3. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It's a 2/3. You care about collecting evidence. Again, you get the upside of just putting counters on something.
I feel like these green guys are like so obvious. This does what it does.
Yeah, this does green things.
Last one is Hard Hitting Question, which love that card name.
Yeah, Hard Hitting Question is a really classic card for green. It's a green sorcery for 1. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. It's just a bite.
Yeah, the bite cards are always nice.
Bite for 1 though.
1 mana.
1 mana bite for bite sorcery. I'm gonna give a unexpected honorable mention. I saw this card earlier and I thought it was kind of cracked. Flourishing Bloomkin. It is 2 mana, 1 and a green, plant elemental. Flourishing Bloomkin gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. It's got a disguise for 4 and a green. When Bloomkin is turned face up, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put one of them onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. Just a good green card.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in mono green, this is solid too. Like if you just end up not being able to splash a color, or you get some of the surveil lands in green. I mean, even if you don't like, you can only get like 4 green like forests in play. Mana 4/4. It is a 0/0, but still, like you go to the number of forests you control. Not hard.
Yeah, and 2 mana 4/4, but also like has the ability of like, if you are disguising it and you turn it face up, you're then immediately getting 2 more power on it already.
Right. Also, taking those lands out of your deck and limited is so high impact.
Yeah. The last thing I'll talk about is the multicolored stuff. This is a lot shorter than the rest of the episode because multicolor stuff is like pretty straightforward.
Also like hard to play. Like you have to be playing exactly that.
Yeah.
Where, like a lot of the cards Frank talked about are going to be good in green X, blue X, red X. This is going to be like No. This card goes in one deck.
Yeah, and they're usually like the signpost cards for
Right.
like the archetypes, so they're like meant to be good.
Yeah.
However, I did mark specifically that I wrote most of the commons in multicolor are like they're good, but some of them are just, I think, traps. Like some of these cards I just
Sure.
think are straight bad. So, or mid. Not necessarily bad, but like you'll play in your deck if like your pool's really bad,
Mhm.
but not unplayable. So here's what I put up some of the examples of cards that are good. For uncommons. First being Sanguine Savior. This is the Orzhov one. It is 1 and then Orzhov colors. Vampire Cleric. It is flying, lifelink, disguise 2. When Sanguine Savior is turned face up, another target creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. It's a 2/1. 2/1 flying
Ooh,
lifelink
yeah,
with
that's
disguise.
nice.
When it goes face up, give another creature lifelink. You can do this on attacks. You can do this on blocks to give something lifelink.
Mhm.
And it flies with lifelink.
I forgot to mention, now that we're scrolling through these multicolor cards, one of the returning mechanics as well is we got back are these fuse spells or just split cards? They're just split cards. We got back split cards. They don't fuse. I think that was Return to Ravnica, but that's still really cool that we have split cards.
And they're all good. Like both sides are usually like pretty good.
Yeah,
for
which is
both.
nice.
And they're splits in the sense that like you could pay either like on this one, Hustle and Bustle. I'm not going to say that one because I don't think that one's that great. Never mind. Push and Pull. It is on push 1 and either white or black. Destroy target tap creature. Pull 4 and either red or black. Put up to 2 target creature cards from a single graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. They gain haste until end of turn. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Up to 2 target creatures. And like, right, if you're playing black, you can have either side.
Right.
Or you could just get one of those sides if you're playing either. Like, right, you have the ability to play this in Mardu.
Yeah. Or if you're playing white and you're like, well, I need some removal, I'll just pick up this split card.
Right,
I
just
won't be able to
split
use the other
card,
one.
just play the tap side.
Mhm.
It's not bad.
Next card is Crowd Control Warden.
Yeah, Crowd Control Warden. This is the Selesnya card, 3 and green-white. As Crowd Control Warden enters the battlefield or is turned face up, put X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of creatures you control with disguise for 5.
Wow.
And it's a 4/4. So if you've got a lot of creatures, you just made a really thick centaur baddie.
Is there anything that turns artifacts into creatures in the set that you saw? Because that
Not-
would be so nuts if you just had a ton of treasures and they all just became like 1/1s.
Not that I could see.
Still, though, like, wow.
Yeah.
That's a good card.
Last one is Gadget Technician. This is 2 and blue-red. This is it? Goblin Artificer. When Gadget Technician enters the battlefield or is turned face up, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, with disguise for 2. It's a 3/2. So 3/2 that makes an artifact Thopter.
Yeah.
These are all cards that I'm like, yeah, these cards are like good.
If you're playing those colors, just play them. They're good.
Yeah. There are cards that I think are like traps. I'm sorry. Dog Watcher is also good. This is the Boros one. It is a human citizen. It is a 3/1 with vigilance for 2, with disguise 2. When Dog Walker is turned face up, create 2 tapped 1/1 white dog creature tokens. Just making more dudes.
Yeah.
And then the last one that is on the good side, Fairy Snoop. 1 blue black. Fairy Detective. Flying 1/4 with disguise 3. When Fairy Snoop is turned face up, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 card into your hand and the other into your graveyard.
Yeah.
Card selection, 1/4, flying, detective.
Lots of butt.
Bad or mid. First, Shady Informant. This is a Rakdos. It is 3 and a red-black, ogre rogue. When Shady Informant dies, it deals 2 damage to any target with disguise 4.
That's so bad.
And it's a 4/2. 4/2 for 5 sounds pretty bad. Or you can pay 3 and then like flip it up to like get 2 things.
I feel like there's something
Mid.
missing. Like, there's got to be some reason why this card is this way.
It's just like when it flips up, you can either like block and shoot to face, or block and shoot another creature.
I guess if Rakdos is aggro enough, this kind of makes sense. Where like that last 2 damage is like guaranteed, I guess.
It is supposed to be aggro, and it is supposed to be, I think, disguising. But
yeah, I mean, this is like pretty good suspect, I suppose. Or like you give him menace, now he's a 4-power menace, really hard to block when he inevitably does block. Let's say you double block with like 5 toughness, both guys die, etc. It's not the worst card ever, but I definitely agree it's like not great.
Right, and if you're suspecting on an aggro deck on a card that's already 5 mana, or like that you have to flip for 4, like I don't know, feels like the body and the cost is not where it should be.
The only thing I like is the guaranteed 2 damage. It's like when you have them low enough, you're like, I'm attacking with this guy, you must block. He's probably gonna die, and that means you're probably gonna die. That's pretty much all I can see.
Yeah. The next one is the Rift Burst Helion, whatever. It's 5 and a red green. It's a Helion. It's a reach 6/7 that has disguise for 6. So you could have this early as a 2/2. That like I think that makes it a little better. Is like you can put it onto the field as a 2/2 with ward 2.
Yeah.
That like for 6 mana you can have like a 6/7.
Like this is like a late game card you draw where you're like, man, please something. The flyer deck is killing me. And you draw this guy, and you're like, cool, maybe I stabilized if they haven't suspected.
Yeah,
maybe.
I just feel like you're dead by the time you're flipping it for 6. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, if this was reach and trample,
hey, this has to be, true, trample. This has to be like you draw it on like turn 7, and you're like, please, something that can block flyer.
Yeah, like
that's about it.
Otherwise, like I think the only reason why it's like mid is because you can put it down on 3, and then like, oh, I've got nothing to do later. I've got this 6/7.
Well, that's why I like this card, honestly. Like you might just play it in your Gruul deck because you're like, well, this is always a disguise. Always a disguise. And then if I get lucky, it does something else. If not, it's a 3 mana 2/2. It's doing stuff in my deck.
Yeah. It's not like bad, but like you maybe play 1.
There's something to be said about the fact that the disguises are like, your cards suck, but it's like poker. Or like, hey, they don't know my cards suck.
This disguised creature's cracked. You don't want to swing.
Kill them.
Swing first.
Yeah, because like all of a sudden they kill your guy, and you're like, oh, I absolutely did not care that you traded.
Yeah. The last one being the undercover Crocodile.
Why?
Elf Crocodile Detective. You guessed it. Cool. So I mean the card itself, like I love the art, I love the idea of like this crocodile detective,
it's
like zooming through the sewers. It is Simic, 4 and green blue. When undercover crocodile deals combat damage to a player, investigate, and it's got disguise for 5, and it's a 5/5.
Yeah, some of these cards are like almost vanillas.
Yeah, it's like, look at my 5/5 that like I can play on 3 as a 2/2 and then flip it up for 5, and when it gets in,
maybe
I'm getting that clue token.
It must be that the cards are designed this way for a reason, you know? They can't be like, maybe there's like
dude. Too much faith.
I don't know, like I've been trusting Monty with these last limited sets, you know. These guys must with like something about the suspect mechanic must be correct when you're actually playing the format.
Right, but like they said blue green, I think was blue green.
Collect evidence.
Yeah, so
that's
I'm like
6 evidence, buddy.
Sure.
Hey,
when is it dying?
Can you block my 2/2?
Yeah, like swing. I'm gonna block this 2/2 so I can get the collect evidence on this.
For something else.
Yeah, I think it's pretty mid. The uncommons, I put down that I'm not talking about them because I looked at all the uncommons and they all look like very, very good. All of them.
Yeah.
There are a couple that are like, this is okay, but for the most part, the uncommons in the multicolor stuff is good. The only one that it was like meh about was this Tin Street Gossip, this Viashino Advisor. It's a 4 mana 4/4 with vigilance that you can add a red green to either cast face down spells or flip creatures to come face up.
I don't hate it, but it's definitely not exciting.
No. Like
The Vigilance is kind of cool.
Yeah, 4 mana 4/4 Vigilance.
Actually, the Vigilance is really interesting with the fact that it's flipping guys over.
Right, because then you can do it like on an end step or something,
Mhm.
which like that's good.
Or like during the attack, if you have like some kind of combat trick, you're attacking, they do a weird block on your morph, you're like, okay, well, you were wrong.
Yeah.
Like that I can see being something relevant. Or if you end up flipping that the guy that gives all your guys +1 in trample at instant speed while you've attacked already. Like
right.
no blocks? Oh man, I got bad news for you.
Right. That's what I had.
That's pretty much the whole episode. Otherwise, no. Did you want to add any hot takes for standard before we get off?
I'm pulling for black white to be like good.
Yeah.
I think that like we are gonna brew around that and hope that's gonna do some work for us.
Yeah, we keep talking about Orzhov like nonstop, and I honestly think that Frank and Julian specifically this week were really, really in the tank, and I think they've come up with something solid that we don't want to talk about yet until we're sure is something special, and then we'll definitely be able to talk about it soon. You want to talk about Soul Search?
No, it just being like Soul Search is like if you're specifically doing Orzhov, it like almost fills your bat slot. Target opponent reveals their hand,
Frank's,
you choose an on-land card from it, exile that card.
Yeah, we're doing some soul searching.
Nice. Anyway, that's our episode. I hope that this preps you for pre-release and like just at least gives you some nuggets of like, oh, these are the mechanics. These are cards that like for at least commons and uncommons, I know what to throw into my deck now.
Tell us about how your pre-releases went. I want to see your decks. Post them in the Discord. Tell us how you went. Did you win? Did you lose? What was good? What did you learn? What did you like? Not like? Were we wrong about any cards? Were we right about something?
Never wrong.
If any of the advice we gave helped you out, tell us about it. We definitely want to see it. I love seeing people post their decks in the Discord. So just post them. I want to check it out.
Yeah. All of our shout outs. First, shout out to MTG Chicago for MTG Chicago for the camera that we're using right now is via him. So
True.
Sal,
I use
appreciate that. Thank you
for his channel.
Sal does our thumbnails, and a lot of our recordings that we do in store are done via MTG Chicago. Go check them out on YouTube. And
I think our match is finally going to be up this week because Sal had like a family emergency, so he couldn't get the SD cards from me. But Frank and I had like this hilarious Nib Mizzet versus Izzet match. And I think as of like today or tomorrow, well, a couple days ago, as of when you guys are seeing this, it's finally going to be up. And I've been wanting to watch that one specifically because I've been watching all the gameplays that he's uploaded of that night of Pioneer. And it's just been such a blast. It's really fun watching the gameplays for us watching playing in the games. But if you are local, come. We'll get you on camera. If you're playing something cool, I want to get you on camera. Or if you're playing something off meta, definitely want to get you on camera. I like to add variety to Sal's channel because he's always helping us out. I want to throw it back to him as well.
Yeah. And our community tab now has like videos specifically of our gameplay from MTG Chicago that we're posting.
Yeah.
So go ahead, check Sal out. Next is Nancy Steroids. We're doing our intro and outro music. He is releasing a ton of music. It's great stuff. Please go ahead and check him out via Spotify. He has been letting us know that his channel has been growing because of us, and we love that.
That's awesome.
And our stream music is like when we're streaming is usually his as well.
When Frank's streaming. When I stream, it's K-pop or nothing. Apparently, because I broke it.
Yeah, so we're just going to pray that we're not going to get sued over that one. Or like get hit with, ASCAP, BMI, all of those licensing agencies that I deal with for work.
I don't know who that is. But
but anyway.
Also, we're going to have the playmat soon. I think Todd already put the artwork up last time, but if you could do it again, I should have it on Tuesday for anybody that wants.
So Wednesday.
If you are a top tier on Patreon, we're just going to send you one, so don't even worry about it. But anybody else, if you want to get a playmat, hit me up. I can get you a discount if you're already a patron. If you want to get one through the store, if you're local, I can get you one. If you need me to ship it out, I can make that happen. Playmat artwork is super cool. We're really happy with it, and we're excited to be playing with those playmats at MagicCon.
Yeah. You can also follow them in Boris Hat Gaming on the website. Shout out to Boris Hat Gaming for allowing us to do the recording in the store, selling our playmats. Also, Todd helps out with our videos, who is one of the store owners. Just love the community that we have here. So please, if you are looking to purchase some
Sealed products, Karlov Manor.
we only have play boosters now, so it is even easier for you to buy.
Packs.
Please support Borsat Gaming for those purchases.
Appreciate it.
I think
that's everybody. Otherwise, thank you to our Patreons and the viewers as always.
Yeah. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will just be more preparation for Standard, because it will be the last podcast we record before going to MagicCon Chicago finally. And we'll then, after that, give you an update on how we did. Hopefully well.
Hopefully good
or,
news.
you know,
Or
we'll
not
have,
bad news.
or we'll have tons of pictures of all our favorite content creators. And
if you see us there, definitely come reach out. We'd love to get some photos with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in to Tales from the Tap. We appreciate the support, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one.